This is a story about a man, his family, and the place he called home. It's also a story about survival, about loss, and about a genocide that never seems to end. Our guest today is Tareq, Mondoweiss' Gaza Correspondent. When we think of Gaza, we often picture a place marked by destruction, by constant bombings, and by people caught in the crossfire. And all of that is true, but for Tareq and 2 million Palestinians in Gaza, it was more than that. It was home. Tareq grew up in the Shajaya neighborhood of Gaza, a place where life once moved with a kind of normalcy. He had a house surrounded by olive and lemon trees, with his family all living nearby. His mother would sit in the evening light, watching the sunset over almond blossoms. It was a life like many of ours, filled with the scent of jasmine, the sound of children playing, and the hope that someday, this place, Gaza, would finally be free. But all of that changed on October 7th. My home became a bag I carry with me, Tareq writes in his latest reflections piece for Mondoweiss. Like so many Palestinians, he had spent years enduring the Israeli blockade, holding on to the idea that after all the sacrifice, all the struggle, there'd be a light at the end of the tunnel, that the Israeli occupation would end. But instead, his family's future became a series of evacuations, bombings, and moments of sheer terror. In the first week of the genocide, Tareq tried to keep moving, keep working. Every day, he went to a cafe near Al Shifa Hospital to find some internet and sent his reports back to Mondoweiss. Every night, he returned home on a route that was different from the one he took in the morning, because the streets had been hit by shelling, the buildings destroyed by airstrikes. His life, his family's lives, became a cycle of displacement. And then, one day, his home was gone, bombed, razed to the ground. Tareq has lived through wars in Gaza before. He somehow always managed to survive, to pick up the pieces and carry on, like so many of the 2.3 million people trapped in the besieged Gaza Strip. But this time was different. This time, survival wasn't just about staying alive, it was about holding on to what little was left of his homeland. He spent 6 months living in the middle of a genocide. As a journalist, it's his job to document the destruction, to give voice to the people still struggling to survive in a place that's been cut off from the world. But as a father, Tareq's greatest fear wasn't dying in the field. His greatest fear was that his 1-year-old son would wait at the door saying Baba, but he wouldn't be there to open it. This is the story of one man. And it's the story of Gaza, a place that now exists only in the memories of those forcibly displaced by Israel. Everything they knew turned to rubble around them. Tareq's life, like the lives of so many Palestinians, has become one of displacement and one of constant violence and uncertainty. He's experienced the relentless bombing, the hunger, the massacres. He's lived through it all. But what's more devastating is that his story is part of a much larger one. One where 76 years after the first Nakba, Palestinians are still being driven from their homes, still fighting to exist, still holding on to that hope of return. Our conversation begins with Tareq as he's telling me the moments him and his family decided to leave their home. After the war separated him from his colleagues, after he left his home behind, Tareq decided to keep writing. His life, he says, wasn't more precious to him than the truth, but the truth for Tareq is not just about the bombs and the bullets, it's about the people, about what they carry with them when everything else has been taken away. In this episode, we speak to Tareq about his life during the genocide, about his work as a journalist documenting it, and about what it means to live through displacement. This episode is part of a Mondoweiss special coverage of 1 year of the Gaza genocide. Thank you for listening.
And when I found myself surrounded by smoke and all of these kind of fears and sounds and bombings and smoke, I took whatever I could to hold in my hand and run away from my place. Even I left the door like unlocked because I had no time. It's my life on the edge at that moment. So I just get out, and I even couldn't get back. Only my nephew, in the day that the Israeli army ordered us to evacuate the Gaza city, my nephew get back to the home and he check on everything and lock the door. Believe me, Khadr, I wouldn't even imagine that I will leave the Gaza city, not the strip. This idea wasn't even crossing in my mind in any stage of my life, and even in any stage of this genocide. I would stick to stay in Gaza Strip. Eventually, it's the human nature which is struggling to survive, and that's what I just did. I helped my family in the first place to survive.
And Tareq, when you are fleeing with your family, when your family was able to move from your home to Gaza City to Rafah, did you have friends who were also doing the same thing?
Well, I belong to an extended family, a large family, actually. I have 6 brothers and sisters, and they all are married and they have family, and even their kids, their sons, like, got married and they have families too. So it's a large family, but I live with, I'm responsible on my wife, my son, and my mother when she was alive back in Gaza. Everyone evacuated separately because we are a large members and we can't find one place for all of us. So everyone knows anyone in the south, we called them and we managed to go separately. I have the blessing to have my mom, my wife, and my 1-year child. It was some kind of tough to have a child and elderly woman, and she is also a sick woman, and she needs some special needs to, and some special care. Everything fine until the moment that it was really tough to secure their needs. I mean, the medication for my mom and the milk and diapers for my child. Everything, regardless, is manageable. We can handle to starve for a couple of days as adult people. Me, my wife, my father-in-law, and anyone. But children cannot. My sick mother also couldn't.
And Tareq, just so our listeners understand, when you're moving around to different areas and constantly being displaced, and you're with your wife and your baby and your mom and other family members, are you in a car when you're moving? Are you on foot? Are you walking to these places? Is there some kind of transport that's helping you?
There is transportation, like general transportation. And there are taxis and drivers you can get and pay for them. But in such times, the payment, I won't say double, maybe triple, maybe more. But that was the only way for people to move. It's either they walk all the distance, or if they have what needs to rent a car to get them to the south. These are the only ways. And most of families just walk until from north to the south.
You were in Gaza for 6 months during the genocide before your family was able to get to Egypt. Your family was displaced multiple times, seen terrible things, went through hard things that I can't imagine, our listeners can't imagine. And I want to know, did you have moments of it didn't feel like you were going to make it out?
To be honest, every second in these 6 months I was in Gaza, I wasn't sure that I'm going to make it to the next second or the next minute. It was scary and dangerous to live there, and it's still. When you go out, for example, if you want to get anything from outside your place, you're not sure that you're going to get back to your place. Because it happened to me. I was having my son and going to the ATM just to withdraw some cash so I can offer my family what it needs. And a huge explosion just happened maybe 15 meters away from us. The Israeli drones just bombed a car with 3 missiles. And when I get back home, when I just heard that bombing, and I turned back to get home, I had to cross over bodies and blood, and I had to cover my son's eyes, just trying to make him not look to that scene and the blood. That is the kind of life people in Gaza now are living, and this is the circumstances they are living through. No one is safe. No one can be sure that he will make it to the next day. People now sleep in their homes and they never wake up. It happened just last week with 5 of my friends. They were in a room and they slept. 5 of them just got killed by an Israeli airstrike. It's scary even to think about how they live in such circumstances and how we can find someone who can say, like, it's fine, we are going to make it, we are going to survive, and this Israeli army will not be able to defeat us.
Tareq, you are also a journalist, and what was it like to witness what you are going through, having to try to survive for yourself, for your family, for your new baby, and at the same time document and write about these things? You weren't simply surviving, but you were documenting it, and you were a journalist showing the world, witnessing to the world, here's what's happening in Gaza right now. What was it like balancing between surviving and doing important work at the same time?
I can consider my role of writing and document these events as the only thing that I can breathe, like using it. Like it's the only space for myself, for the ideas and the thoughts in my head to be out. And I actually witnessed so many stories, more than what I already reported and more than what I published. When I was going to any place or moving from any place to another inside Gaza, every walk you can get a story. If you just look at anything, if you look at the shops, if you look at people's faces, if you look at people who are selling their belongings to survive, if you look at the kids who are walking on the street, asking anyone to give them anything to feed themselves and their families, everything in Gaza was a good material to write and to document and to tell the people about the life people in Gaza are living by telling these stories. Actually, I wasn't feeling that I'm doing my best, because if I wrote a story, I miss 5 or 10 every time. You are in Gaza. If you write one story, you miss so many, but you can't get all of them. So I was going to myself every day, just clear my head and to write and to get all these ideas out of my head. But I was thinking this way, by doing this, I will get all these ideas out of my head. But what was happening is the opposite. When I write the story, I get in touch with it more and more, and I recall every word that got out from the voices or from the mouth of people that I met, interviewed, and all the events just came to my mind and stormed my head every time I'm writing every word, every line. And I think I got a language between the people I'm writing about and myself. So every time I'm just, it doesn't look like I'm writing a story. It looks to me like I'm having a dialogue with those people. And now I'm asking them, what do you want me to tell people about? And I think they answer me, and their answer just go out to our readers by these stories and testimonies we are publishing on Mondoweiss.
It can just be difficult writing about these things. It's also difficult just the fact that sometimes there's no internet. Sometimes the connection is not good, and you're still getting these stories out to get published. If I recall correctly, there was a time where you were sending a voice note of the whole piece to another colleague of ours who wrote the story. Is that correct?
Yeah, of course. I wasn't able to turn my laptop on for over 6 months. I was in Gaza. There were no electricity resource. We were going far away to charge our phones, and only phones. In shops separated in Gaza, on Rafah, they're using the solar power, and they charge your phone by a price for each hour, like 2 shekels for each hour you want to charge your phone, or only phones and power banks, phones too. So I had no choice, and I couldn't write a full story on my phone. So lucky for me, I have such an amazing team in Mondoweiss, and they were so helpful in any way. They were saying, just get us whatever you can bring, and we will deal with it. And I was sending, I was sitting in my place in Rafah, recording all the notes I want to record. My office was my father's in-law car, just next to the building. And every time I was sitting there and recording, I was fearing that the drone over my head may hurt everything that I'm saying. And it may bump me for this reason, for this specific reason, because I'm delivering testimonies like these. And after finishing recording in the car, I was walking like 2 miles away or 3 miles to go standing on the street to get my phone linked with internet, and then send these notes to the Mondoweiss team, and they work on it. It was like a journey of over 2 months or 3 months to do this. Every day I have to walk and send my work, and then get back home, work again.
Just so I understand, for a couple of months, 2 or 3 months, you were sending stories either through notes or voice notes through WhatsApp to our colleagues at Mondoweiss here. And you were doing this from in your father-in-law's car, all under the fear that this car could be bombed at any moment. You would then have to walk 2 or 3 miles to charge your phone, to get back to where your family was. I mean, that's one, that's incredible. 2, the amount of danger is terrifying. And then 3, so powerful what you were able to do to get these stories out. And these stories, they were so important and so moving, and all of this done from your phone under the most extreme circumstances is incredible.
Maybe I was a little bit lucky to do so. Some people some people got no chance to do the same, even with this hardship.
Were there any specific stories that were particularly difficult to share?
Actually, every story was difficult to share, but there are these stories that stick to my mind, and the people I interviewed for these people were always coming to my head, especially when I go to interview the only survivor. And I went to interview so many of them. The only survivor terms can be adopted now after this genocide in Gaza, because there are thousands of people who are staying alone after the Israeli army killed all of their family members. So every time when I go to meet or call or see the only survivor, I was walking with fear, like, what should I it's hard even to ask him. It's hard to make him tell you some details that you need to know, but you are so afraid and you can't ask him now all these questions. So most of those people who I met, the only survivors, most of their stories like do not go online, or I didn't publish, or I didn't even write their stories, because yes, they were really tough stories to deliver and tell people.
One story that you wrote for Mondoweiss is titled "How the War Killed My Mother," and it is about the story of your mom and how, because of her health conditions and the lack of medical care and lack of hospitals, she wasn't able to make it with you to your journey to Egypt. I was wondering if you felt comfortable talking about this particular story.
Well, this is this is the toughest story I ever wrote, and it took me months to finish it because I'm still like, I'm not getting over this story yet. It was a story about the way that I lost my mother. If this genocide didn't happen at all, I would have my mother next to me right now. And I would be in my home, Gaza, not here in Egypt. And even I can't go to my mother's graves to pray for her or to visit her. But my mom is a sick mother, and I always took the most care of her back when we are in our home in Gaza City. She's blind, she got heart disease, she also got diabetes, and she can't walk. So she needs someone to stay with her like 24 hours every day. And I was that one. And I was lucky and consider myself the luckiest person on earth to have my mother next to me and have her prayers all the time. And I'll consider every blessing that I have in my life is only because of my mother's prayers. But when she got sick in Rafah city, and there were no major hospitals next to our shelter in Rafah, I tried to get her some doctors home. They came and they said, like, you have to move her to the hospital. The closest hospital to my place in Rafah was the European hospital in Khan Younis. But I had no choice. It's either to move her to that hospital or watching her dying in front of my eyes in our shelter and stay unable to do her anything. So I took the choice to move her to the European hospital. And I had to move every day in the morning. I leave my family in Rafah city, my wife and son, and go to the European hospital to see my mom and spend the day with her. And by the end of the day, I say goodbye to my mom, back to Rafah to spend the night with my wife and child. And every goodbye for me was the last, because when I say goodbye to my mom and move to Rafah, I'm not sure that I will be able even to make it to Rafah, not to mention to get back to Khan Younis.
Yeah.
And I was going on this road like for months, every day, going from Khan Younis to Rafah and leave Khan Younis. But in the last, in the first days, the hospital was able to offer her some medication. But then, with the fear of the next and near explosions and flashing and fighting and bullet sounds and fears and screamings inside the hospital, injured people were screaming all the time. And she was freaking out and thinking that the Israeli army is going to invade the hospital and kill everyone. eventually she went in a coma. And the doctors in the hospital was saying that you have to get these medications from out there. And I was saying to them that you are the hospital. You should bring these medications, not me. And they were saying, we can't offer this. It's a war. And if you are not able to bring them, then we're sorry, we can't do anything. And they left her to die without giving her the medication, not because they have it, but they wouldn't give it to her. Because the medication wasn't even available. And it wasn't that important and that like dangerous medication. It was only a medication for her kidney.
Yeah.
And yes, she passed away. And even, oh my God, even we couldn't find appropriate grave to her. I couldn't even imagine that someday I will face the moment that I need to dig a hole in the ground and put the body of my mother inside and put the sand on and fill the hole again with the sand and leave my mother inside. But we couldn't find anything else. Like we couldn't find a grave. It was even hard to find a grave to say goodbye for her and to put her in place at least. But yeah, this is only because of the ongoing genocide. Otherwise, my mom would get her medication. Maybe she would live a little longer. And even if she passed away, we could offer her appropriate and respectful cemetery and grave.
Thank you for sharing that. I know that was extremely painful and
It was
vulnerable. Thank you. Tareq, can you talk a little bit about the journey to Egypt and some of the obstacles you faced to get to Egypt?
Well, my journey to Egypt was also so painful because it was the journey that I realized that I'm losing everything. I'm getting out of my homeland, my neighborhood. I'm even leaving all of my family members, my relatives, everything I know, everything I'm familiar with, everything I love, everything I have memory with, everything I ever go to have picture there, have small memory. I was noticing that I'm leaving all of this while I'm leaving Gaza Strip. And I had so many obstacles and challenging to get out of Gaza. And believe me, it was, in the first place, it was an attempt to save my mother. That what pushed me to go and decide to leave Gaza. Because I just wanted any way to help my mom. But unfortunately, we left Gaza 1 week after she passed away. And also I decided to leave Gaza when I wasn't able to find milk to my children, to my child, because after I lost my mom, I thought that I'm going to lose the rest of my family one by one if I stay here because I'm helpless. I can't do anything in the middle of genocide. What I can't do, I can't produce milk to my child. I need to get it somewhere and to find it somewhere and get it. But I can't produce it. And everything we need, the food, the water, everything it was a struggle to find all these basic things. So I decided to go, and it was really hard mission. Like the Mondoweiss helped me with everything they can. And also some friends helped me and tried to help me get out of Gaza. But it was like an impossible mission. And eventually we have pay thousands of thousands of money to get out. And it worked eventually. But, I felt like it were too late, because when I received the news from my friends who were following the names that got allowed to leave Gaza, and they told me that your name and your family names are on the list, I wasn't that excited because I felt that it's too late. Well, I lost my mother. But the idea of that I have a child and a wife, and they also need to be rescued to survive, pushed me to leave. If I was alone after my mom passed away, I would not leave Gaza. I would not even think of leaving, but only because I have a child and a wife. And my child has nothing to suffer and to struggle to get his food and his milk. No, he doesn't deserve. And not even a single child in Gaza deserves that fate.
I imagine you still have family and friends left in Gaza. Are you able to communicate with them? Do you know if they're okay?
Of course, I need to check on all of them every day, and also to get the major news from them, because, they are on the ground there and in every place separate, like they are in separate places across all of the Gaza Strip. So some of them have internet, some of them do not have, so I call them. But I need to be in contact with all of them every day, just to make sure that they are okay. And also because you're not sure, between 1 hour and the next, you maybe lose your family in Gaza. If you have family in Gaza, only a couple of minutes, a second is making a difference. So you need to be in contact with them like every couple of hours to make sure that they are okay.
Tareq, how has living through this Gaza genocide changed you and shaped your perspective differently on life, on Palestine, on, international community, on the world?
Well, we can say that after this genocide, we are more confident that this occupation will be end, because the crimes and the level of terror that committing by the Israeli army in Gaza, and how people are coping this and still resisting and still fighting. This reflects to the world the actual and the reality about this Israeli occupation. And also I want to say that now the people across the world, like Americans, Europeans, and people everywhere in the world, now they can strongly stand with Palestinians more than the previous time, because now they can see the facts about the Israeli and Palestinian conflict. Now they can see that there is a nation who is defending their land and only want to liberate their land and free themselves from the occupation. And also they are seeing, on the other hand, a country or a state that committing genocide in front of all of the world and cares about nothing, turn a blind eye to all of the international agreements and laws and humanitarian laws and everything. They are just keep committing their genocide against Palestinians in Gaza. And they don't care about anything. I think the world, or the new stance of the world with us as Palestinians after this genocide, I think this will change, and this will make huge difference on the Palestinian struggle from now on.
Tareq, if you want to leave us with one important message to the world, or share what your hopes are for Gaza, and its people and the Palestinian people everywhere, what would it be?
I want to remind everyone in the world that we as Palestinians, we can free our land and we can end this situation. But the problem is the massive support that the Western government is supplying and giving Israel unconditionally. If the people across the world can make any change in these policies, if they can put pressure on their government to stop funding a government that committing genocide in front of everyone in the world, if they can stop this, they can stand with us in this specific area. We as Palestinians, we can promise everyone that we will take back our land and we will free our land in this barbaric occupation.
Thank you, Tareq. It is an honor to speak with you and to hear your story. And thank you for sharing everything that you shared. And I hope you and your family stay safe in Egypt and your family and friends are safe in Gaza, and this genocide comes to an end soon and we will see a free Palestine within our lifetime.
Inshallah. Thank you so much, Khalid. Thank you so much for this.
That's our show. Mondoweiss is a non-profit publication with no paywalls. If you would like to support our work, please go to mondoweiss.net/donate. Please leave a rating and review to help other listeners find the show. Subscribe to one of our free email newsletters so you can stay up to date on events in Palestine and related politics here in the U.S. and around the world. Finally, if you have any more feedback, send me an email at dave@mondoweiss.net. Thanks for listening. We'll be back soon with a new episode.